Welcome to the Black Belt Philosopher, and thank you for joining me in the Boston studio. Tonight is actually a rebroadcast of an original podcast from last June entitled The Path of the Warrior, A Sacred Way of Life. Since then, I have invested in a good microphone, so the sound quality should be noticeably improved. With that said, let's get the show on the road. I've been looking forward to doing this lecture for quite some time, and it has literally taken me close to 20 years of martial arts teaching to prepare. That may seem like a long time, but in reality, what we are going to cover tonight encompasses principles that are over 2,500 years old. To me, that is simply an amazing commentary of the human condition, that we can look at concepts that are over 2,500 years old and still find them relevant in our modern world. We are going to look at the warrior archetype and the concept of warriorship by taking a journey across time and throughout cultures. This is a broad topic, so we are going to look at three main themes: the warrior code, training and discipline, and embracing the battlefield. And for part one, we're actually going to look at the warrior code, which deals with protecting your dreams, aspirations, and ideals. So what is our fascination with warriors and warriorship? We never really see epic poems or works written solely about mercenaries or assassins. Although we may see an occasional movie with ninja assassins or read a novel or two about mercenaries, these aren't really lasting themes. Whether we go to the West with Homer's Odyssey, India's Bhagavad Gita, or modern renditions of epics from the East such as the movie Hero, we find the hero archetype. So what is it that sets the warrior apart from this, that causes warriors to be talked about hundreds and even thousands of years after their passing? Well, I gave you a clue earlier when first going over the three main areas that we'll focus on tonight. Does anyone remember or want to take a guess? That's right. It's the code of the warrior that sets them apart. These are a set of principles or ideals that the warrior is charged to uphold and live according to, that are defined outside of and beyond themselves as simple individuals. What is interesting is that the warrior code is universal across both time and cultures, and dictated a warrior's behavior both on and off the field. Interestingly enough, even though we refer to these as codes, it wasn't until very recently that they were actually written down or actually codified. The reason why they weren't written is that the warriors actually lived them. If they didn't, they died either a physical or spiritual death. It was as simple as that. In the West, this is often exemplified in King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table and their code of chivalry. Here is an example from a translation of Sir Thomas Malory. Never to do outrageosity nor murder, and always to flee treason. Also, by no mean to be cruel, but to give mercy unto him that asketh mercy, upon forfeiture of their worship, and lordship of King Arthur for evermore. And always to do ladies, damsels, and gentlewomen succor, upon pain of death. Also, that no man take no battles in a wrongful quarrel for no law, nay, for no world's goods. This is part of the code of knightly behavior, encompassing not only conduct on the battlefield, but something that permeated all aspects of life. We may see this through our modern lens as a practical way to prevent abuses of power, but there is something much subtler at work here. Up until our modern era, the ideal king was tied to divine will, in that a king was regarded as a reflection of the divine and carried out divine will here on earth. In this way, it was up to the warrior to protect and uphold this divine will, causing their life to be permeated with a respect for the sacred. This theme recurs over and over again throughout both the East and the West. In the East, we have Bushido, or military knight ways, the precepts of knighthood, if you will. The Japanese realized how fragile this sacred connection was, along with life itself, and chose the cherry blossom as their symbol of chivalry. While this represents an acknowledgement of the impermanence of life here on earth, a concept additionally found in Roman Stoicism, it also represents a deep tie to and respect for nature as the ultimate expression of the divine. In this light, we can look at the warrior as a protector, not only of the physical, but also of the ideals of society and nature itself. In the West, it is believed that the Roman god Mars actually began as a fertility god, who was a protector of crops as well as property boundaries. In this way, we also see the warrior as a protector of nature and the sacred. When things go horribly wrong and society collapses, it is usually the warrior who reintroduces a sense of values back to the society. We see this with Krishna in India. Krishna was not a member of the Brahmins or priestly caste, but a member of the Kshatriya or warrior class. Part of the reason for this is that for a warrior, unlike others, upholding a code or set of ideals is a matter of life and death, and not just a good idea. This brings us to part 2, training and discipline. In other words, how do you transform yourself to actually transcend fear? So, how does a warrior become a warrior? Are they simply born a warrior, or is there more to it than that? That's right. No matter how much raw talent and skill someone may have, to become a true warrior requires training and discipline. By exercising a combination of discipline and training, someone with the desire and basic capabilities can transform themselves into a warrior. So here we introduce the idea of transformation, which is one of the most basic principles found in nature. As a warrior is responsible for protecting nature and the divine, they are also responsible for living in accord with nature as living examples of their beliefs. Through discipline, training, and action, a person can transform themselves into a warrior. This transformation requires developing a wide variety of skills beyond what we conventionally associate with a warrior. Homer's Iliad represents a turning point in Western thought regarding warriorship. This book chronicles the War of Troy and the role that Achilles plays in winning the war. However, this also represents a pivotal moment in Greek thought regarding warriorship. At the end of the Iliad, Achilles is killed, and it is not Ajax who inherits his armor, which was made by the god Hephaestus, but Odysseus, because he was the one who actually guarded and protected Achilles' body. This is symbolic in many ways and tells us much about Greek thoughts of warriorship. Odysseus was favored by Athena, the namesake of Athens itself. However, Athena was not only a fierce warrior, but a warrior with intelligence and cunning. She sprang forth from Zeus's head fully formed, an indicator of her wisdom as well as her strength. The importance of intelligence and warriorship is often overlooked in our modern era, but as Plato eloquently states in the Republic, a warrior who cannot count will not know whether he is being attacked by 100 or 1,000, or how many troops are on his side. We can see that the training of a warrior is just as much mental as it is physical. No matter how strong someone is physically, if they don't have the will, inner strength, and discipline, then the physical body becomes useless as opposed to an effective tool. Much of the rigors of training are designed to get a warrior not only to face their fears, but to get used to dealing with fear and going beyond or transcending it. We tend to think of a warrior as fearless, and a good warrior truly is. But what do we mean by the term fearlessness? Are we talking about not experiencing fear, or is it something else, something more to it? We tend to have this idea that the perfect warrior experiences no fear. But as we saw with the warrior code, a true warrior is anything but cold and unfeeling. They have to be able to feel in order to discern what is truly worth protecting, so there must be something more to this concept of fearlessness. In reality, fearlessness for a warrior is not a matter of not having fear, but going beyond fear. Through training and discipline and a deep sense of conviction, the true warrior is inspired to go beyond their personal fear for something greater. This is the true purpose of discipline training. The warrior is placed in situations which are designed to force them to deal with their fear until this fear doesn't disappear, but becomes a tool, a voice if you will, that reminds them that they need to pay attention to what is going on and do something about it. Through this process, they are transformed and strive to maintain a state of constant transformation and growth. In other words, being a true warrior is by its very nature requires action, much like nature itself. This brings us to part 3, embracing the battlefield, learning how to confront adversity and combat ignorance. The battlefield is a place of trials where the warrior is tested. It is only through action that the warrior will be able to tell if she has been able to transform herself into a true warrior. It also where the honor of the warrior is put to the test, as this is where the actual code that the warrior has sworn to uphold is put under the most severe tests. It is for this reason, along with the warrior code, that battle is often embraced and looked forward to, as it gives life meaning, even if it means experiencing a physical death. Both the Roman Stoics and the samurai actively contemplated death on a daily basis, not in a morbid sense, but to give greater focus and appreciation for life. Rather than be distracted by things that were relatively unimportant, the Stoics and samurai used death to maintain their focus on their ideals, to help them lead their life with honor and purpose. In this way, being on the battlefield was considered a great honor, because they were protecting not only their property and countrymen, but also their ideals. The samurai are perhaps best known for having the attitude of being already dead when they reached the battlefield, but this was more than just an attitude adopted for battle. The term permanently dead is actually a more accurate description for the attitude of the samurai. They understood if they could cultivate an attitude of being permanently dead through life, they would no longer be inhibited to act, whether on the physical battlefield or battlefield of life. As part of this attitude of embracing the battlefield, a great amount of attention to detail was placed in preparing for death. Rather than struggling with the idea of battle or death, which was part of a daily contemplation, energy and attention could be focused on preparation, from weapons down to what they wore and how they wore it. There really is not much more to say about embracing the battlefield. It is a concept and way of being that requires action to try to intellectualize it only dilutes the meaning and importance of the action itself. Finally, this brings us to part 4. Warrior in each of us, or how can we apply the warrior archetype to everyday life? So, we have covered 3 areas of warriorship that I mentioned at the beginning: the warrior's code, training and discipline, and embracing the battlefield. But we still have one more thing. What about our original question from the beginning? Does anyone remember it? Yes, that's right. What is it with our fascination with warriors and warriorship? This is something we still haven't really answered. Well, I will give you some insight into what I think, but then we can continue this into our discussion. You see, I believe that there is a warrior inside each and every one of us, someone who desperately wants to protect and uphold ideals that we hold near and dear to ourselves. When we look at the archetypal or mythic warrior, we can't but help see a part of ourselves and who we would like to be. The truth is that we all have the potential within ourselves to protect our ideals and what we hold true and dear, to transform ourselves through discipline and training, and to apply what we know through action in our everyday life. These are the lessons that the Path of the Warrior shares with us, the timeless quest to bring out our best and transform ourselves for the better of all. How can we do this? Well, I will leave you with a quote we should ask ourselves. This is from Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda's Yaqui Indian master. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll talk with you next week.